Our uniquely massive support for Israel has cost trillions of dollars and multitudes of lives. It has diminished our moral standing in the world, lessened our domestic freedoms, and exposed us to unnecessary and growing peril. The majority of Americans, as well as our diplomatic and military experts, oppose this unique relationship. Yet, the lobby for Israel continues to foment policies that are disastrous for our nation and tragic for the region. If we are to have Middle East policies that serve the national interest, that represent the highest values of our founders and our citizens, and that work to sustain a nation of honor, decency, security, and prosperity, then it is essential that all Americans become active and informed. These are the facts. American taxpayers give Israel over $8 million per day. This to a nation at its peak of 7.4 million people, smaller than New Jersey. Israel has received more American money than any other nation on earth. From 1950 to 1953, Israel's financial influx from the U.S. was $1 billion. Israel at that time had 1.6 million inhabitants. In the past 10 years, American taxpayers have given Israel approximately $200,000 per family of 5. This costs us even more. U.S. aid to Israel is given in a lump sum at the beginning of the fiscal year. Since the U.S. is operating on a deficit, this means that we borrow the money, give it to Israel, and then pay interest on it long after it is gone. Israel, on the other hand, makes interest from it. Congress has mandated that Israel's aid be immediately deposited to an interest-bearing account with the Federal Reserve Bank. Additional costs because of Israel. About $1.5 billion to Egypt and $843 million to Jordan is dispensed annually under arrangements made to induce these countries' friendly relations with Israel. Billions of dollars have been lost to U.S. manufacturers because of the Arab boycott engendered by Israeli actions. Enormous and continuing costs to U.S. consumers of petroleum, which surged to such heights that it set off a worldwide recession during the Arab oil boycott imposed in reaction to U.S. support of Israel in the 1973 war. There are a multitude of costs. A report by economists commissioned by the Army War College in 2003 to analyze the situation in full found that the total cost to Americans over Israel's 60-plus years has been $3 trillion. Yes, that's $3 trillion. The Iraq War, an invasion largely promoted by Israeli partisans. The costs of the Iraq War, in lives and in dollars, are almost incalculable. The war added trillions of dollars to the federal debt, and this doesn't include future health care and disability payments for veterans. Economists report that the global financial crisis was due, at least in part, to the Iraq War. The lobby for Israel overrules U.S. experts. U.S. policies in the Middle East rarely reflect U.S. interests and values. Instead, over the objections of a multitude of State Department and Pentagon analysts, they are largely driven by a variety of factors. Special interest lobbying. Fortune magazine rates one of the many lobby organizations working on behalf of Israel, AIPAC, as the second most powerful lobby in Washington. Many analysts consider the pro-Israel interest group to be the most powerful lobby in our nation. By the late 1960s, Senator William Fulbright found that U.S. aid to Israel was being secretly funneled back to lobbyists in the U.S. who would use it to lobby for still more U.S. money to Israel. The U.S. Justice Department and other agencies have often attempted to enforce U.S. laws regarding the Israel lobby. Such efforts have repeatedly been quashed. Israel loyalists in the U.S. government and media. The efforts of a growing number of individuals with close ties to Israel, some are neoconservatives, others are neoliberals, who often hold key positions in U.S. administrations, the State Department, Pentagon, and the media. campaign by Israeli zealots to engender Islamophobia, to create fear and hatred of Muslims, a highly diverse population of 1.5 billion people whose faith is one of the three Abrahamic religions who worship the same God as Christians and Jews. Israeli-centric news reporting by the US media consistently misportrays the current situation and the history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Hollywood movies and television shows, which often play a significant role in shaping attitudes and beliefs. These shows, frequently produced by individuals with ties to Israel, depict Arabs and Muslims almost always negatively, Jews and Israelis almost never negatively, and Christians both positively and negatively. Israel promotes its own interests at the expense of Americans who fund it. There is considerable evidence that Israel is not the close ally many Americans believe it to be. The GAO has reported that Israel conducts the most intensive spying operation against the US of any of our presumed allies. Israeli forces have killed and injured additional Americans. Rarely, if ever, have there been significant consequences. Israel has stolen US technology and passed it on to other nations, some of them US adversaries. The Israeli attack on the US Liberty. In 1967, Israeli forces attacked a US Navy ship, the USS Liberty, killing or injuring over 200 American servicemen. An independent commission in 2003 by extraordinarily high-ranking US military officers and officials found that Israel had committed an act of war against the United States, that the US president had recalled rescue aircraft, and that the president had ordered a cover-up on the incident. These statements, recorded in the congressional record, were not reported by the US news media. Israeli ethnic expansionism has caused regional misery, instability, and continued conflict. Since this is funded by American taxpayers and shielded by the US government, it is causing dangerous hostility toward the US. Israeli aggression. Israel initiated all of its wars except one, and its violations of international law, human rights conventions, the UN resolutions, have created enormous hostility against it throughout the world. The US, as Israel's #1 funder, is increasingly imperiled by hostility created by Israeli actions. Israel frequently uses American weapons in violation of US laws, killing and maiming large numbers of civilians, women, and children. The unnecessary peril. Before Israel, the US had no enemies in the region, has caused Americans to tolerate dangerous infringements on our liberty and violations of our Constitution. This is causing deep damage to our character as a nation. Safety would be far better attained by enacting policies based on US interests and national principles, and by heeding the wisdom of the father of our nation. Nothing is more essential than that permanent, inveterate antipathies against particular nations and passionate attachments for others should be excluded, and that, in place of them, just and amicable feelings towards all should be cultivated. The nation which indulges towards another a habitual hatred or a habitual fondness is, in some degree, a slave.